the entire basis of Misfit Athletics, the way that we started, the reason that we started is we felt no program is one size fits all. So we have what we call our variable training system. When you're in phase 1, we're going to say you need to work on these 2 or 3 things. You pick your 4th or your 5th, that kind of thing. When we are in the comp blocks, you pick, if you are not preparing for the competition, you pick everything. So you go in on a Monday and you've got 6 pieces and we say choose 3. And the ability to go in after experiencing competition and seeing where you had to stop and exactly why you had to stop, the idea that you get another 7 weeks to pick what you need to get better at, if you're honest with yourself, I think is a huge gift going into your off season. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Drew, Sherb, Ted in the house, and yes, the return of the Pebble. He is here. How was Nicaragua, sir?
It was fucking great.
Yeah?
It was awesome. Yeah. Let's see, got there, man, few interesting. Google Maps, not quite as reliable. when most of the roads are dirt. Got there, thought it was like a 2-hour drive to the hotel area, and 2 hours in when we stopped at the gas station, I was like, that's interesting. We're stopping so close to the destination. The driver looks at me and he's just like, only 1 hour to go. And I was like, God, fuck. After a full day of travel. And every automotive option is on the road. You got people, bicycles, motorcycles, tuk-tuks, 18-wheelers, cattle. Literally everything that can move is on a dirt road in Nicaragua in some capacity. So
how was the NAR?
It was
shreddable?
Good. It was highly shreddable. Yes. Very good, very consistent time of year for that area.
You all get to see soon. Isn't there a photo of you potentially going up behind you in the studio?
So we don't have any proof that this kid knows how to surf. We just know that he likes to get away from us. We now have photos that could have been shopped. He is wearing a t-shirt and all of them. But there is a video that he showed me.
Big white t-shirt.
Surprisingly, he's facing the wave, I don't know. We're still unclear. Yeah, it's still unclear whether he sent a body double to Nicaragua to surf.
I was actually just in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire.
What a disappointment. What a disappointment.
So disappointing.
That would be. I got to catch you up on some serious shit that's been happening.
Okay.
I just added 2 victories to the win column on the old bad boy here. Yeah.
Sherby.
Yeah, Coach told me that meditating would help me. Fuck, he's been wrong every goddamn time so far.
He's just been putting you to sleep.
Definitely his fault, not mine.
You've done it 6 times total?
Yeah, that's basically enough.
Or 7. Did you do it this morning?
I'm on 6. I missed a couple days.
Oh, all right.
Are we talking about the same thing?
I don't know.
Those are rookie numbers.
I think I got a 30 while you were gone.
Get your hand off the table.
I haven't squeezed it yet.
Always trying to cheat.
130. Sweet.
One thing that hasn't changed since you left.
Yeah. I don't know. My HRV's been through the roof since I got back.
Does that mean you go last, Drew?
What's that?
Does that mean you go last since you won?
Yes.
Oh, did I get dethroned because I wasn't here to defend
you should have gone
belt?
first.
Oh, wow.
Scrub.
Okay. Oh, wow. I dropped off by 1 pound, 168.
Damn, I was close.
I think that I've been in the 160s before. This is all I'm just going to throw that out there before
in
I
your
go.
life or in the last 2 weeks?
He's talking about his heart rate right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's his
my Apple Watch told me I was below average VO2 max yesterday of the entire population of people with Apple Watches, which is mostly people in America, which is, you know what they say. All right. 169. 150. All right. Well, things are back to normal. Yeah. Today's podcast, we are talking about competition block number 3. And by the time you are in the future, which you are right now, or maybe we're in the future, I'm not sure. Someone is in the future right now. There will be an article at misfitathletics.com by the Pebble, written in his mind while he was on the waves. Training versus testing.
I was thinking a lot about it then.
It's very important, or maybe he was thinking about it at that gas station when he was stuck there.
I had a lot of time.
the training versus testing. And in terms of testing, we could be talking about test week. We could be talking about online competition, in-person competition, whatever. Learning to figure out how to attack that. Now, that dropping right before a new block of programming comes out is the type of thing where we're like, hey, please read this like right now.
Got a lot of media to consume to make the next training block as valuable and as useful to you as possible.
That's true. That's an important thing with following our programming. If you're new to Misfit Athletics, is understanding that we do what we can do to remote coach thousands of people. So we create content, we create these podcasts, the articles that we're referencing, tip videos, even the musings to really start to kind of tap into your mindset and stuff. So we make an effort every single week, if not every single day, to get out there and make sure that you guys are getting the type of coaching that you need when it comes to actual programming. I am going to knock off some sort of housekeeping type stuff. So as we transition into competition block 3, there will be semifinals athletes and teams that are quote unquote stuck in competition block 2. I just want to make sure that people understand how that's going to work and that we haven't forgotten about you. So in terms of semifinals, people, week 3 taper. So semifinals group 3, if you are the week 3 athletes, your taper is week 1 of competition block 3. So when Comp Block 3 starts on June 7th, your taper week will be happening then. If you are week 4, if you're the final week of the semifinals, week 8 is going to publish that exact same day as a PDF. So you're going to go in and the entire blog is going to be Comp Block 3, but at the very top, semifinals group 3 taper, semifinals group 4, week 8. You will have your entire week of programming laid out for you in a PDF to download. You'll be able to see exactly what you're doing for the entire week, no matter what subscription level you are on. And then week 2 of Comp Block 3, June 14th, that is the taper for week 4. So you're going to be able to download that there as well. So just to make sure that, you're trying to figure that out. And then if somehow you qualify for the CrossFit Games and have not told us that you follow Misfit Athletics,
please do.
Or you decide to follow Misfit Athletics, Games Prep begins as competition block 3, but it really doesn't matter which week you qualified and how much of a break we want you to have in between. So make sure you reach out directly to us. And then everybody else, while we're on the topic of semifinals, when we're going into this, use this as your rallying point, your sense of motivation when it comes to the sport that, maybe you watch the semifinals and if I just could get the chance to be out there, I could mobilize my resources and just really give it hell, like really get after it. Actually, the day that this publishes, there is a musing just about that and what it means to step up to the starting line at a competition and really, sort of dig into that feeling, because our body thinks that you're getting ready to fight a tiger or run away from it. So you decide whether you want to go out there and slay some tigers or sprint away from the tiger that's in first place. So as we're getting started in this, there's sort of that feeling of there's a pretty good chance that you qualified. Most of our athletes qualified for the quarterfinals. And we're insinuating in this scenario that you have not qualified for the semifinals. Maybe that gap was tough for you. Maybe the last few weeks, keeping it together and really getting after it for competition block 2 was a real challenge for you. If that's the case, you need to watch the semifinals. You need to watch the people. You need to see the people in heat number 1 as the weekend progresses and ask yourself, if I work my ass off from now through the 4 phases back into the comp blocks in 2022, can I be one of those people? You have a visual representation of the paces that they're holding, of the sets and reps that they're able to do within a Metcon. You have all of that on display. You ask yourself, could I be there? And if you can, or if you think you could be in 2 years, whatever it is, that's the motivation that you need to use, because it can be challenging. We're very far away from the Open next year, and you need to be able to kind of, for lack of a better term, get your shit together before happens again. I need to do it for a whole year.
I was gonna say, I'm thinking about that idea, as well as the article that Hunter's gonna have up there for that June 7th date. Is just like, you get a chance to watch the semifinals, you're gonna get a chance to at least watch 2 weekends worth, or going on that
there's
third
some
weekend.
fucking monsters at Torian and Mac, and you're gonna have a good representation of what you're chasing.
What those people are able to do, and then you can go in and read that article Hunter's talking about, or Hunter wrote, and you'll understand that, like, yes, there are times where you get to showcase your fitness, but like you have to remember that when you're doing 99% of your training, you are working towards showcasing down the road. So making your training be set up, and kind of the way you approach your training, both day to day, phase to phase, and then even just in the heat of the moment, what do you do when you're executing? If you really do want to make that leap, you have to be thinking about that stuff like day in and day out, and you have to make your training work for you, which I think is a main thesis there, is that if you are looking to make the leap and say that hey, I want to be competitive, and you actually want to put in the work to do it, here's the blueprint on like how to understand how to go from that aspiring semifinals athlete to actually being a semifinals athlete.
And there's also CrossFit provides the unique opportunity, unlike any other sport on the planet, where you can actually compete against the same people without competing. Like you are never going to be able to mimic the speed of an NFL game without, physically.
I don't ever get to try to dunk on LeBron.
Yeah.
Ever.
But like you can set up your floor similar to the Granite Games, or at the very even least just look at the Granite Games workouts. And we're just saying that because Austin and Caroline are prepping for that now. But you can do that. You can see what your time is, and then again, like you said, watch Heat 1, watch Heat 2, see where your time stacks up. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different based on the events and how the floor is laid out and kind of the atmosphere and stuff. But this is the only sport on the planet that I can think of where you can get as close to competing at the highest level if you want to. As possible, and then just get an idea like, oh wow, I'm actually not that far. And people oftentimes surprise themselves. It's like, wow, I'm not that far. Maybe I'm not that far in one event, but I'm a fucking light year away in another event, and that's all information that's valuable to you.
You could also, there's a lot of athletes that come from a sports background, come from a high skill, maybe power-based background, that actually are with them on all the events that we're doing this weekend.
Yeah.
And we rewind, and they don't have the double unders, they don't have the wall balls, they don't have the rowing, the prerequisites to get to that place. And that's something where you can say to yourself, I am that higher skilled athlete. I do need to dig into these movements and fall in love over the course of an entire year with these things. So for anyone, again, I'm going to say this probably 10 times in the podcast, so bear with me. Anybody that's new to Misfit Athletics, the way that our season structure works now with the new CrossFit Games season is you have competition block 1, which starts around the open. That brings us into competition block 2, which is happening right now. Competition block 3 is what we're talking about, that you'll get started here in a week. And we do those 3, and then we have our 4 phases. So phase 1 begins at the beginning of August. You're going to go through phase 1 through phase 4. And that is very much going to be a progression that we feel all athletes need to follow. And something that is very unique to every program that you follow is the ability to get used to the way that we program. So if you want to get started on phase 1, it makes a whole lot of sense to get started now. You get started on June 7th, and you have an entire 7-week block of time where you learn how we program lifts, the type of information that you need there. The people that get the most sore when it comes to following our programming are typically someone who jumps in on a brand new phase right at the beginning. And there's just these nuances to the way that we program, vernacular that we use, and things that there's always going to be certain biases that we think are super important, and you need to get your body sort of used to those. So I would say that while it is games prep, it is a very good ramp from today to phase 1. And there are actually some things built in there that are going to get you to that point. One of the questions we would probably get from a handful of athletes is, why would the masses follow games prep? In 2019, we had a group of athletes come to us and essentially say, these are all CrossFit Games athletes, please do not make us go follow our own program on an island. Don't do that to us. We rely on the Misfit community. We rely on the camaraderie of being able to work out with thousands of other people. They're in touch with dozens of them. So please don't make us do that. So we go into a room and we say, how do we write CrossFit Games programming for everyone? The entire basis of Misfit Athletics, the way that we started, the reason that we started is we felt no program is one size fits all. So we have what we call our variable training system. When you're in phase 1, we're going to say you need to work on these 2 or 3 things. You pick your 4th or your 5th, that kind of thing. When we are in the comp blocks, you pick, if you are not preparing for the competition, you pick everything. So you go in on a Monday and you've got 6 pieces and we say choose 3. And the ability to go in after experiencing competition and seeing where you had to stop and exactly why you had to stop, the idea that you get another 7 weeks to pick what you need to get better at, if you're honest with yourself, I think is a huge gift going into your off season.
Yeah, I would say a huge feature in Comp Block 3 is the ability to test yourself against old games events or, mock games for Misfit mock games and see what capacities are lagging behind the others. And again, getting used to the style of programming, vernacular, all those things are really important. But you also get a, kind of like a dose of reality right in your face. Like, hey, I'm not good at these 3 or 4 things or this time domain or that movement. That's right in front of you as we go again to build a base to start for next year. It's right in front of you. Like, you're not thinking back to the open back in February. All right, it's now August. I haven't done anything. Like, how do I decide where I'm going to be come up for the next year? It's right in front of you. You get a chance to test yourself. And again, that helps you better set yourself up on a trajectory that's going to allow you to, reach your goals in the following year.
Yeah, and it's super important also to mention that Phase 5 2019 is definitely our greatest hits. It's the best concert we ever had or the best party we ever threw. That was the best feedback we ever got from athletes. Yep. We'll get into what is different about what the old Phase 5 was and what is now Comp Block 3. But there is a very summery kind of outdoor feel to it, which I think a lot of athletes resonate with, being able to mix in the idea of, especially if you live in a place like Maine or somewhere more aggressive, like in Iceland, Canada, whatever it is. It's nice to be able to lean into that during that part of the year. Being stuck in the gym during the only months of the year that are actually really nice can be super challenging. So we're going to get into the details now. One of the things that we do not do as much as we used to make sure that this podcast is actually entertaining and informative is you will be doing 5 at 95, 4 at 92.5. We don't go through and do that. We talk more about what we are trying to achieve and sort of how we're going to get there. So the strength work, we always start with the strength work. It serves 2 purposes. One, during competition season, during any season where you have to go do something and we have this weird ass sport, we have no clue what the sport is. We are trying to get you a tiny bit stronger at every single lift. And not just the lift, but the act of core to extremity, squat, pull, grip. All of these things are built into the strength, the skill, and the accessory in a way that once you go into a Metcon, which is 99.9% of our sport, you are better at moving with power, with, endurance, all these different things. We check off all those boxes the entire time.
And that's another, reason to plug the community and say thank you for your feedback. Because one of the things we heard, historically is that when a competition's coming up, we don't know what's coming. It would suck to not have snatched for 6 weeks or not to have deadlifted heavy for this amount of time. So what's important about this stuff is, as much as it is about motor patterns and getting familiar with it, it's really just to make sure that you know roughly where you're sitting so that when these things do come up in competition, you're not like, oh man, I PR'd my snatch back in Phase 2. When was that? November? Okay, what am I going to hit now? You don't have that information. So again, the community feedback was, hey, it's nice to kind of check in with these things. And we found really good success with athletes having these rotating GPP style of lift sessions. So again, it's another way that you guys have helped us make sure that you are better prepared, but that type of information is super valuable to us.
There is also a shitload of powerlifting in Phase 1 and Phase 2. And we are aware that when an athlete has not done any powerlifting and they go do a shitload of powerlifting, things happen. So there is purposefully a legitimate progression from competition block 3 to Phase 1. What we were talking about before was very macro. Was you're going to want to get used to how we do things before you jump into Phase 1 if you want to be successful for 2022. On a micro level, we are replicating things that are going to show up in Phase 1 and Phase 2 so that you have a feel for that. I would say specifically more of the pressing, shoulder overhead, that sort of stuff. And then the style of back squatting and deadlifting that we do is going to be presented, sort of in that same kind of thing. moving on to conditioning. It's always interesting talking about conditioning, right? So guess what? You're doing Metcons and intervals and bitch work.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about the Metcon reset a little bit, but I think one, that's probably the best feedback, like, or that style of conditioning piece has probably been the most beneficial to athletes who go compete, as far as like their competition prep go. And for those that, again, either new misfits or maybe you haven't seen it, we try to put it's in kind of the header of that workout. If it says Metcon reset, you got to do a little bit of, you got to kind of turn on the athlete IQ a little bit and say like, okay, what is that? And we've talked about it a little bit, but you're basically it's basically if you removed all of the rest and then looked at it, it would be like, oh yeah, I get that. It's just 5 rounds of wall balls and burpee box jump overs.
Right.
Like it's pretty straightforward. But then we put like rest in weird places. Like why is the rest there? And we're trying to elicit, we're injecting intensity by making you stop. We're just saying, hey, if this were straight through, you need to, like, this is where we think you would slow down. So we're going to let you stop, meaning that you need to work hard getting up to that point. And it's kind of interesting. We've seen some of these Granite Games workouts get announced, and it's just like, that's a Metcon reset. Like, that's a Metcon reset. Like, it seems to work super well from a training stimulus, and it's also something that seems to be getting tested a little bit more as like CrossFit. I think like initially in the open, like a long time ago, it was like these we can't do intervals, we can't like add rest and stuff like that. And obviously that's a thing of the past. We see the interval in just about every level of competition. So I think it's been super helpful for athletes to get an understanding of how hard they can push and what it means to get 30 seconds of rest before they have to keep going again. It kind of tricks everybody.
It's very visually appealing to reset athletes together, right? It's almost like when like Ted convinced me to watch the F1 racing show.
Oh,
It's the idea of I'm way behind and now I have the pace car in front of me and I have a chance at the end to sort of go there. Obviously for fans, it's like my dude was, 8 seconds off and has no chance. And now he's, right behind so-and-so. I think that part of it is really important. And then we are forcing the concept of overreaching. That's what we're chasing here. We need athletes, even in regular Metcons, to believe that they can go faster than they think they can. Essentially, that's what overreaching is. If we went the same speed in everything that we do all of the time, it would be very challenging to improve, right? So if we have to go faster than we can go, that can really, get up into your brain and scramble things a little bit. How can I go faster than I can go? That doesn't make any sense. So it's what we're doing here is saying, okay, for the first 3 weeks of Comp Block 3, every single Metcon that you do is going to be a Metcon reset. You are going to train at the speed of the athlete we want you to be in the second half of Comp Block 3. You're going to go in, you're going to get after it. We're going to have mock games right there in the middle. And then as you come back down, you're going to start to have that belief of, it was 30 seconds rest. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen me chalk my hands, but I can throw a little 30-second bad boy in there.
I'll throw a 30-second rest.
Go the Cody
there,
Mooney
the
elbows on the
ticking.
knees. Like it's easy to knock off 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever it is. So what we're doing is not only forcing an adaptation physically, but mentally it's like, you can do this. You already did it. You already checked off these boxes. Now it's like, okay, Dad took the training wheels off. It's time to go ride your bike on your own. And you wobble for 2 seconds, and then you're like, oh my God. I was going to say I'm Lance Armstrong, but I don't know. I don't think he's...
Can't say that anymore. I don't know you points anymore.
I'm not allowed to say that. Another nuance that's fun is events are coming back. So a lot of times in competition prep, we have what we call events where it's really about flirting with that line of training versus testing and saying, okay, I am going to set myself up in my gym with my training partners. You're going to have to run across the gym to start. You're going to have to handstand walk in this direction. Then your ski ergs over there, whatever it is, to really get yourself into that mode. But we talked about it this year and we realized a lot of people don't have training partners. A lot of people don't have access to, you know, a gigantic gym, or, you know, we own a gym that's tiny, and that we have neighbors, and, you know, we don't want people getting hit by cars and all that good stuff. So CrossFit Games events, old events, are now being put in there. So we do still want you to set them up and mimic as much as possible to be able to really go, okay, I'm doing the same event. Like if you watched, like if, for instance, if we programmed the one last year where they were doing the burpees over that like log thing, obviously if you do bar facing burpees, that is not the same. That is not the same movement that's in there. Come on. So you can, one of the easiest things that you can do here is you can just go to YouTube and search the event that we put in there. We have the name of the event from the previous games in the title every single time. And what you're doing is you're going in and saying, okay, you know, this is what so-and-so got, you know, this is what this other person got on this. You can race whether you have training partners, you don't have training partners, and you can really ask yourself, where am I at leading into this? And just 1 second, Sherb, the other caveat to this is we will be hatchetizing this. So if you're following the hatchet program, you're going to be able to go in and see, like, what version would I have? You know, I'm a quarterfinals athlete. What version of this would I have? I want to be, you know, forced to put the pedal to the metal and red line and have that feeling in my chest, but I don't want to have to stand around. And Caroline goes in and changes those pieces so that you can actually have that same stimulus and therefore can still measure your time one-to-one to those other people.
I also think there's something that Hunter talked about earlier with that athlete IQ. By watching someone else go through the event, you can pick up parts where they took advantages on certain movements or how they transitioned. All that information is super valuable. And oftentimes when we're working with athletes getting ready to compete, it's helping them remember that there are other things outside of the individual movements that matter when you're competing, like how you transition or where you set things up or where you decide to push or where you decide to break things up. So in addition to being able to kind of compare yourself with old game scores, you can also see strategies that maybe either worked really, really well, or, hey, someone-so went out and sprinted the first 400 of a 1.5 mile run, probably a bad strategy. I'm going to try to do this instead. So again, building that like athlete IQ or building that ability to read a piece, understand where it's appropriate to push, where it makes more sense to break things up, or, you know, that stuff is really important. And again, another reason why an athlete who wants to compete at that level needs to be invested enough to go and watch an event like that is to learn that type of information, because that is extremely valuable when we're talking about the difference between first and 20th place at a games event being 15 seconds.
The other component to that too is that a lot of times athletes like to think of workouts kind of on a micro level. So instead of when they look at something, they say like, okay, hopefully you look at something and say like, okay, I can't achieve the stimulus of this workout because that barbell is too heavy, so I'm going to reduce the weight on the barbell. That's a terrific first step. But what kind of the second iteration of that is, what is this workout going to do to me over a long period of time? Because it's not just about the individual components. It's about how they play off of each other. And I can think of just yesterday having done the Granite Games hang muscle up squat clean thing against Caroline. I was like, okay, like I could probably do the barbell, but I'm gonna reduce the weight a little bit because I want to give her a little bit of a push.
Yep.
And I'm going to blame it on my post-vacation fitness, but mostly... Yeah,
you thought you didn't go on vacation, you win round one, for sure.
I did.
That's a fact.
It's
not an excuse.
I won the first set of muscle-ups on round one. It was pretty close, though. But the point is that I was way too gassed, even with the reduction in weight. Like, I chose like, I'm going to reduce the barbell weight only. Everything else is going to be fine, except that you forget as the athlete, like, all of these things add up to a cumulative effect. And so the overall point of that is the hatchet program where, sometimes we change the barbell weight or the reps, but we're also we're creating the same stimulus. We need you to achieve the stimulus, not just, that barbell is too heavy, so I'm going to make it lighter. That's a great first step. But again, you need to make the modifications to get the stimulus of the workout or of the event, not just adjusting one single movement and thinking that that's going to make the whole workout appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's important too that for people who have bounced around, they're not sure whether they should be following MFT or Hatchet. One thing that Caroline has done that has truly made Hatchet now a version 2 of Hatchet is she has more pieces in there. So she'll have on a given day 4 or 5 pieces with only 1 or 2 being mandatory, and then you can personalize. And it just goes back to the idea of this is not a scaled thing. This is not, so not only are we not scaling in volume, but we're not scaling on the overall concept that no program is one size fits all. So she's gone in with all of the information that we've been, giving her for years and saying, okay, well, if it can't be one size fits all, then Hatchet also needs to have these extra pieces in here for you to go in and personalize and figure out what you can do. So that's one thing when it comes to all of our programs, when it comes to teens, masters, anywhere, Hatchet, MFT, those things, the overall concepts sort of, trickle down, but then it's about what does this athlete need? What is this person's goal? What are they chasing? What are they after? How is their CrossFit Games season different in terms of dates? Like obviously there's no semifinals level yet for teens and masters. That means the programming has to be significantly different when it comes to that.
Right.
To get back to competition block 3 in terms of the idea that it's like fun and outdoors, there is a lot of running, biking, and swimming.
What?
And I want to start with the swimming because I'd really like to see more athletes give it a go this year. And I built the progression for the swimming based on that. We will do our absolute best to make sure that on the website that you're choosing on the weekly work between the swimming and the fasted cardio. We know some people will say, don't care, doing it anyways, and that's fine. But we don't want you to think that we are doubling up on those things. So you're going to see every week or most weeks, you're going to see a fasted cardio piece that is aerobic that, we would consider mandatory, but that is side by side with the swimming, and it's either or, and it will be either or for a CrossFit Games athlete as well. So how we open this up is a 500 meter swim time trial. And for most athletes, I think it's manageable to go find a place and swim 500 meters. It's not short by any means, but it is not in your like when we went out that time and Paige was prepping for the games and they swam a mile. We're very far away from, obviously you can do quick math and figure out 500 is not 1600, but just the overall concept of like how huge is this task that I'm trying to accomplish. So I think most athletes can get there. If you start flirting with, I don't know, what do you want to say, guys, 30 or 40 minute swim when you're coming to 500 meters.
Oh, fuck.
That is a serious issue. Now, to reference CrossFit Games athletes in the death pond in Wisconsin.
Death pond?
I mean, some dude had flesh-eating or brain-eating bacteria.
In there,
ended up in the ICU, no big deal. They swam in the 15 to 25 minute range after a 1.5 mile run on their 500.
Is it really that long?
Yeah, you didn't believe it when we watched it on the YouTube video either. Some of these people are like, I don't want to say world-class swimmers, but pretty fucking close. It's very different, by the way. Also, that same person would not swim that in a pool back and forth. It's very different having a ton of athletes around you, not knowing where the buoys are, having turnarounds, having just run 1.5 miles or paddle, whatever it is. So things are different when it comes to that. So if you start getting into that time frame where you're surviving in the water, what we're asking you to do is take that 500 meters and ask yourself, like, how long can I stay comfortable in the water in that, 25 to 30 minute range, somewhere around there, and go swim for distance. Make sure you got a Garmin, Apple Watch, Fitbit, whatever. Does Whoop tell you how far you swam?
Probably.
I don't know. I've never swam with it in the pool.
So make sure that you know how far that was, and we're just turning it into an AMRAP. No big deal. I will give one preview session here. So week 2, we are going to tackle slightly more volume than 500 meters. We're going to do 10 by 50. That is going to be your 500 meters. Then you are going to rest 3 minutes and swim 100 meters for time afterwards. And each week, the volume of the intervals goes down and the volume of the swim goes up. So that following week, you're going to have a 200 meter swim, and then you're going to have a 300 meter swim. And then you're going to get thrown back to the wolves during mock games, but we'll get there in a second. You're going to follow this progression all the way through, and we want you to go from, holy shit, I survived 500 meters, I gave it everything I had, or I survived 25 minutes in the water or the pool, And then at the end, because you just went in and put that time in the pool, and you don't have to go fast to be good at swimming in CrossFit, just throwing that out there. You have to be comfortable in the water. So that's what we're after when it comes to the swimming. I would just like to the point where we give away a bunch of free shit. I want to see Misfits swimming. Like, it is the type of exercise where you're like working on every muscle, but also flushing at the exact same time. You think about all the other movements we have and how brutal they are on the joints. Swimming is too good of a workout and too safe from a, injury prevention and flushing standpoint not to work it into your repertoire. So there will definitely be some days where we head out to the lake and have Brady show us how to swim.
God, I don't want to swim with Brady. He'll be done before I start. All I was going to say about swimming is that there are plenty of resources. One of the things really cool about CrossFit early on is they would go out and find these subject matter experts for different things. If you're not familiar with swimming or, don't really ever go in a pool, there are a ton of awesome videos that are out there for how to get comfortable with the freestyle stroke or the breaststroke or the backstroke or the side stroke, as ways to teach you how to go moving. Now, chances are you're going to do a backstroke relay at the CrossFit Games pretty low, but it's definitely worth learning how to.
You have to be comfortable in the water before you're going to be good at swimming.
Because we've seen athletes go to like Wadapalooza and they jump off the pier and then, halfway through their head's bobbing straight out of the water and they're literally completely vertical in the water, not going anywhere. And
you want as much surface area competing with the water as possible, right? Yeah.
But again, just use YouTube as a resource. There are a ton of information on how to swim correctly, or at least giving yourself a few tips that you're not as inefficient as you would be when you started.
True. All right. And you can probably guess that if it's swim, bike, run, that it's aerobic season. Aerobic season is here, ladies and gentlemen. You have 10 dedicated aerobic pieces within a 7-week period. And that is actually within a 6-week period because we're not referencing mock games, it's just in the middle. Plus 13 fasted cardio sessions. So in the matter of 6 weeks, you have 23 aerobic-based, fairly close to monostructural. We say monostructural, and maybe it's mixed machine. Maybe you got to do a set of pistols in between, something like that, to try and keep your mind in it. But we're talking about 23 sessions over the course of 6 weeks. And yes, that is on purpose.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to add when you were talking about the Metcon resets, yes, we learn a lot about how you would have to stop at certain points in the workout, but a Metcon reset is also really valuable to tell you how developed your aerobic engine is. If you get done your first block of your Metcon reset and you get this 1 or 90-second window and you feel no different after 90 seconds have passed, there's a good chance your
What's the movie where they turn into like statues? You guys know what I'm talking about? Like,
I feel like I do, but
there's some sort of like magic shit going on where the people end up like turning it. I guess there's a few movies that are like this. What's that?
Harry Potter with the basilisk?
It does happen in Harry Potter, but I think it also happens maybe in like Ernest Goes to Camp or Ernest Scared Stupid, something like that. But the idea of that's what, like, how I feel, someone who's working very hard at their aerobic base.
VO2 max is immaculate.
Yes, fucking immaculate. If in 30, 60, 90 seconds you develop cement legs as opposed to your body going, oh, nice, we have rest, there are issues.
Again, just another nod to why this aerobic work is so important. Again, the Metcon reset is just like a magnifying glass on that very specific thing. If you develop that aerobic engine, you will find that, yes, you won't feel 100% when you go back to restart again. And, one of the things we see athletes do is they start and they feel like, man, am I wasting my time going this slow in my aerobic work? And it's like, no, you are learning how to flush waste, how to go long, how to be a sustained athlete. Because the biggest difference we see between CrossFit athletes and aerobic athletes is CrossFitters would ideally like to sprint the first 400 of a mile, or the aerobic athletes like, no, I'm going to try to kick at the very end here. So there's a lot of information gathering there. But there's also this opportunity to develop this robust ability to recover when things like the 2-2-2-3 intervals come up at the games. And again, I think that's a great example of the athletes that do the best in those events are the ones with the best aerobic engines, because they can recover and go at the same speed in rounds 3 and 4 where you cannot.
And to talk to probably a broader sect of our community, think about quarterfinals. Yeah, there was the rope climb GHD sit-up pistol workout. I would argue that's a lot more about kind of muscle overload and stamina than anything else, but the cumulative effect of the entire weekend is where your aerobic system
what did that workout do to the rest of your workouts?
Exactly. Yeah. So you can do, if you were like completely screwed if you did not go in a very specific order because your body wasn't able to recover from event to event, day to day over the course of the weekend, that indicates to me the aerobic system isn't there, the ability to recover isn't there among some other issues. So it's not, yes, in the Metcon reset, we go all the way from that micro level of being able to recover within an interval, within a, seconds or minutes, all the way to can I recover within a couple hours and still be able to hammer the next event in quarterfinals, or be able to recover tomorrow and my legs don't feel like I got smashed in the legs with a sledgehammer for 3 hours.
All right, Misfits, just a quick break. Shout out to our show sponsors and hopefully save you a little bit of money. Our favorite CBD company in the entire world. There are a lot of them out there right now. There are a lot of them that sell some janky ass products. One of them is not Pure Spectrum CBD. I personally take the 2,500 milligram tincture. If I've been hanging out with Hunter and Sherb most of the day, I do 2 droppers under the tongue. The second is that's it. I take 2. I meant 2 bottles under the tongue. My bad.
One of the head. One.
But for real, every single day I take that when I get out of work. It helps me sort of set the tone for unwinding for the rest of the day, to get into that rest and digest and prepare for the next day. You can find that at purespectrumcbd.com. And if you use the code word Misfit, you're going to save a little bit of dough.
We are also brought to you by Proper Fuel. You can head to properfuel.co to use... So let's try that again. We are also brought to you by properfuel.co. Let's try this again. We're also brought to you by Proper Fuel. You can head to properfuel.co and use the code word Misfit to save on your first order. What's great about Proper Fuel is it has these 7 essential ingredients in your post-workout shake. The number one name in the game when you're finished your training is trying to rebuild and regrow those muscles. And what's nice about Proper Fuel is it has the essential amino acid called leucine. Now, if you've never taken leucine on your own, it is gross. It is very bitter. It does not taste good.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
But what's really nice about Proper Fuel is it tastes excellent. Again, it has a great chocolate flavor and has leucine in there to help you with that muscle protein synthesis.
I don't know if you can tell that.
Rebuild those muscles. So again, you can head to properfuel.co and use the code word Misfit to save on your first order.
Doesn't help with VO2 max, though, I don't think. Sorry. All right.
Who else are we brought to you by?
We are also brought to you by Sharpen the Axe. This week, the semifinals collection drops, and not only is it some per usual ball and swag, that's going to go towards sending our semifinals athletes to their physical semifinals, things like plane tickets, food, all the stuff that they need to make sure that they are solely focused on competing, qualifying for the CrossFit Games. Everything that you guys send our way as far as those purchases gets to those athletes. So super important. This coming week, that semifinals collection, head to sharpentheaxeco.com. You can also use the code word Keala, Keala, to send some more money to an also equally as important cause. So lots of good reasons to get to sharpentheaxeco.com this week.
You're listening to a programming podcast. We are talking about how we program and why we program that way, and very specifically Competition Block 3. You can head to misfitathletics.com or the SugarWOD marketplace and try. You can sign up for Competition Block 3 and you don't get charged for 2 weeks. And you can cancel. If you don't like it, you're going to like it. You're not going to cancel. But you get 2 weeks for free when you go there. Now, we talk about programming all the time, but the actual programming that the 3 of us follow is over at teammisfit.com. So if you're an affiliate, if you were an athlete at an affiliate and you're like, my goodness, why does Drew look so muscular on YouTube?
So handsome on YouTube. Grandma.
Why does Hunter keep PRing his back squat? And why does Sherb keep losing to everyone? No, just kidding. In Metcons,
we don't train that.
teammisfit.com for your affiliate programming needs. You can also do the same thing. Try it out at your gym for 2 weeks for free on the SugarWOD marketplace. All right, back to the show. All right, so you guys have to play remote coach now. I'm going to give you a scenario, Sherb. I'm going to give you a scenario, and you're going to tell me what to do.
Okay.
My favorite form of exercise, 100% favorite, is cruising down the road in the sunshine, listening to beer bongs and Bentleys on my bicycle. Can I look at a C2 bike piece and extrapolate out some sort of workout, or do I have to just keep riding around aimlessly?
Of course you can. Of course you can. What's great about about this time of year is that we asked you to kind of get out the gym, and what you can do on your road bike is go down the road and play with stimuli. Like, what is different resistance feeling when I change the gears? What do hills feel like versus straightaways? How does my body perform?
I cannot escape the hills where I live. I can run and escape the hills up that MPH by 10, 15.
Yeah.
Not possible.
But there's a lot of information to be gathered there, because while you might have the opportunity to do an event in front of everybody on a C2 bike, one of the things that's great about the CrossFit games, I like to put you in scenarios where you're not comfortable, you have no experience. So if you are competing at that highest level, you need to have some knowledge of how to get on and off a bike, how to switch through your gears. And it was very obvious in like the crit, for example, and then the what was the cyclocross one? Athletes who understand how to shift gears, when it was appropriate to get off the bike, get on the bike, get off the bike, get on the bike for different, textures on the ground. Exactly. Show you a J-hop real quick. But those things are extremely valuable. And if you don't know how to do that, you could be leaving a bunch of performance on the table just simply based on inexperience. Not that you weren't fit enough, but you don't know how to do those things.
But like, it's so much different. If I go out for a bike, you're typically telling people, it's open season on damper, it should be this, it should be that. I'm not going to be able to deal with that. So how do I turn a piece from what is written on the blog to something that I can do on my bike?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the, like, for example, let's say it's a long aerobic piece in a low damper setting. You're looking for something that has you, in a position where you're on a mostly flat area. You're able to go in your higher gears. You can keep the pedals going at a very high cadence. Or conversely, if you're doing something that's a little bit more sprinty, maybe you find a really gross hill that takes you 30 or 40 seconds to charge up over and over again, and you feel what it feels like to go do that hill in 21st gear, or do that hill in 16th gear, or in 12th gear, and learning how those gears impact your performance and how your legs feel, how your lungs feel, how you're able to repeat the effort is very valuable information. Now, yes, it's going to be a little bit of experimentation, but one of the things we're going to try to help you guys with is understanding how to convert those distances and how to convert those intensities at different places so that you can interchange a road bike if you'd like to go out and do that. Because, it is summer. We're talking about like Maine being beautiful. Like, I want you to go out and get the sunshine and the vitamin D as well as get really fit in the same time. So, we're going to try to provide you with information so that all right, roughly how could I convert this C2 bike thing to be out on the road?
I mean, and at the end of the day, the cool thing about the road bike is that, or rather the difference on, you've got a C2 bike, you've got numbers directly in front of you. You don't necessarily have that on a road bike. Obviously, you can mess around with a watch or like an app or something like a Strava, something like that. But it's obviously not going to be that same kind of heads up display as if you're sitting on a C2 bike. But at the end of the day, you can very easily say, I went this far in this amount of time. What was my pace? And then compare that to a known metric, like a 10K C2 bike, a 20K C2 bike, compare those splits and be like, the road bike's a little bit faster. It's a little bit slower. This might be why, that sort of thing. So it becomes more about information gathering this, rather explicitly performance.
So it's another nod to, I'm doing all of these pieces, and while for the sport itself, I want to know what my paces are and all that, but also for situations like this, I know that if there's, roughly 20K of intervals that I'm going to be able to hold a 157. Well, guess what? That's just, 157 times 20, and you got yourself the amount of time that it's going to take you to go there, and then you can just turn it into an AMRAP versus distance, something like that.
You could also get the feel of what holding a 150 on a C2 bike at a 4 damper feels like, and then trying to create that exact same feel on your road bike, and knowing that like at that road bike I can go at 17 miles per hour. So let's say the event is a 30-mile bike around the pond there in Wisconsin. Like, how long that will take you, what that should feel like, how that will go. And again, just kind of building that athlete IQ and that training information so that based upon previous experiences, how to connect those dots so you're not just going in there guessing like, all right, it's 30 miles. How long is that going to take me? Or what's that going to feel like? You have that information.
All right. Skill work, Hunter.
Yep.
I go in and I either probably shouldn't be putting a vest on for my chest to bar pull-ups, or I don't have a handstand walk ramp, or
just do it.
Put that vest on and go run.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Handstand walk ramp with the vest.
Should I figure out what the hell to do on my own? Should I be looking at Hatchet? Like, how do people go in and see games level skills and figure out what they're supposed to do in that same scenario for themselves?
I think those two are the best options. So again, thinking that Hatchet is going to be appropriate for a large portion of followers who have, the quarterfinals experience under their belt. You compare the two and say to yourself, okay, what are we looking to get at here? Is it volume accumulation, or is it more kind of skill based? Like, let's get better at something like the handstand walk ramp, and then how can I simulate that on my own. And that means, if it's a chest to bar pull up with a vest, does that mean you need to put a 20-pound vest on? Like, fuck no, put an empty vest on and just get a feel for that was actually easier than I thought it was, because the vest is 3 inches thick. So the range of motion's a little bit different. What does it feel like for this thing to be moving around on my torso while I'm attempting to do these butterfly pull-ups? Or in the handstand walk ramp instance, does it actually matter that it's the same exact ramp that's in competition? Like, no, probably not. There's a infinite number of easy ways to set up some gymnastics mats, plates, barbells. Maybe I've seen people like walk over barbells,
at all.
But but to create a similar stimulus, and you have to understand, in a lot of these skill pieces, these are kind of sport specific things that you won't necessarily see in phase 1 or phase 2, because we're probably not going to see a vested chest to bar pull-ups in the open or quarterfinals. So you have to understand that in these skill sessions, these are probably a little bit more sport specific, like let's prepare for the CrossFit Games specifically. And then you have to, again, athlete IQ says, okay, let me do something that's maybe a little bit different than what I've done before, and start to progress towards something more advanced. And then when I come back to those chest to bar pull-ups, or just, the 25-foot straight up handstand walk, that's probably going to be a hell of a lot easier.
Never a bad idea either. If that using the vest and the chest to bar pull-up, like a volume piece, is a bad idea for you to do your warm-up. Maybe you try a vest to see, kind of gauge your experience level, see how it feels. That way you at least have that information, but then you realize that, like, this would be bad training for me, because the games out there's going to be getting 15 chest to bar pull-ups and I'll be doing 3. I should probably go without the vest. But there is still value in experimenting with some of these higher level skills, because the skill transfer does occur when you have some higher skill things. You just got to make sure that you're not.
If you never try,
exactly.
Yeah.
If you never try, it's going to be really hard to bridge that gap. The one other thing that I will say is, when you aren't good at something, it's hard to ignore the minutia. It's very challenging, but it serves a super important purpose to pull yourself back and say, what do these 3 want me to accomplish in this piece? Like, aside from the movement itself, let alone whether it has a vest or, it's weighted in some other way. When you do that, you will know what I'm trying to get after. And the best athletes are good at that. Like, when we just had the 75 chest to bar for time recently with the weighted vest, they didn't bat an eye. They put the vest on and they went until how they would have felt, based more on feeling the number of reps, to know that, okay, I should probably drop now. And taking that same sort of attitude to it and saying, okay, I'm just going to ditch the vest, and I know what it feels like to chase 75 chin over bar pull-ups, and I'm going to do the same thing here. We get the rest built in. If you make a mistake, you recalibrate, whatever it is. But again, we understand what it's like to be frustrated with a skill, but really try to take a full step back and look at it and say, how am I going to get better at this piece? I want to touch on mock games a little bit before we wrap up. So every year, smack dab in the middle of games prep, we have mock games. There will also be a hatchet mock games, which really honestly is for almost everyone that's out there. Like, again, if you want to mix one of the other ones in for fun, that's fine. But I would say, honestly, the hatchet version is much closer to even a mid-range semifinals athlete, type person to do. There is no point in going out there for an entire week and beating yourself into the ground. I don't think the experience will work wonders for you mentally to go in and do that. So those workouts are written explicitly for people prepping for the games. But of course, there are all the other versions. There is the teens version, the masters version, the hatchet version, and the anywhere scaling and modifications. You're going to have a lot of options to go through that. Really what we're doing is rallying around the games athletes as a community and saying we're all doing this. And maybe your distances are shorter, your reps are less, your weight's less. Again, you are still able to compare yourself to those same people. You're just at a different point in your journey. Sherb, what did you say the week was on that? Because I definitely wrote that.
That is the week of the 28th, June 28th.
The week of June 28th, going into the first weekend of July, that is mock games week. So you'll have your primer day. You'll be able to go in and sort of get yourself ready, make sure that you're not still reacting to the week 3 volume. We're going to give you a rest day and a primer day, and then we're going to go into the games events. The only teaser that I will throw out there is if you have a road bike and a place to swim and you'd love to bring a bunch of weight plates and a barbell to that place, start figuring that out right now, so that you can do one of the events, which looks super fun.
You didn't sound very sincere when you said that.
Super fun.
Sound very sincere.
Quote unquote. I also don't want to skip over the other programs, just in terms of talking about what is different about Teens, Masters, Hatchet, Anywhere. But again, we are chasing very similar goals. They're just at different levels. And when we go in, we're taking the same overarching themes. All of the programs apply to the things that we just talked about. Every single one of them applies to that. It's just about what's appropriate for that group of people. I don't know if you want to say anything about the teens.
Yeah, I have a couple of things that I'd like to acknowledge as we're kind of moving into the next season and kind of, wrapping up what would be the 2021 CrossFit Games season. One of the pieces of feedback I've gotten from a couple of my remote athletes who are teen qualifiers for the games is that I started mixing in a little bit of the morning movement stuff. Just it's been something that's been on MFT for a while, been on Hatchet, but we really hadn't sprinkled into the teens just yet. And my two athletes were like, I really like just kind of getting up and getting moving. So we're going to be adding the morning movement to the teens track for the first phase. Again, trying to prepare you for phase 1. So it's not a culture shock when we start adding a whole nother potential session for a lot of people. And for you higher level competitors, it's another opportunity to practice the skill of, getting yourself amped up and ready to do something twice in one day, because we often suggest that some of the higher level competitors create 2 sessions so they can have the most intensity in their pieces. So morning movement, again, is really about just getting your body more, woken up in the morning, accessing ranges of motion, spiking your heart rate to kind of help you sleep better the next day and kind of feel better as you work into your first training piece for the day. So morning movement's going to make its debut in the teens track in Comp Block 3. The programming won't be as variable as MFT. There will still be some, mandatory pieces versus some optional pieces, but there'll be a very clear delineation between, hey, I qualified for the CrossFit Games and I should be doing these pieces, or I'm someone who's aspiring to be a CrossFit Games, as a teenager, and I need to keep working on things. So you're going to see the volume that's kind of mandatory for the teens most days is about 4 pieces, with one of those being the morning movement. So kind of like, again, not necessarily a warm up, but a secondary piece there so that the volume's not crazy. And then you kind of personalize for yourself as you go. Teens will also be swimming, because if you aspire to compete at the highest level, as of 2019, they started mixing in some of those outside the box events for teens. They weren't just in the barn in Madison the entire time, but they were.
And you're on a trajectory to be the face of the sport in a couple of years.
Exactly. We want to build the building blocks to move forward. And then last but not least, you will also see previous games events, but rather than being CrossFit Games events, they will be the events that the teens and masters have done historically years past. Again, just trying to use the lens that Dave kind of programs through, so you get experience there. You're able to go back and watch those events and see, all right, in 2017, this is what these teens were able to do in the max snatch event, or this is what they did in the sled sprint event. Using that information to kind of set yourself up to see where you are or where you want to be. And those pieces are going to be appropriate for some athletes who didn't qualify for the games. The only caveat I say is don't add that on top of your additional volume. Potentially substitute that out for something else that you're maybe good at already and you don't necessarily need for your day. Because again, the answer is never volume, it's intensity. I've said it to my teens, I say it every single time I can. Try to focus on getting good training in than just doing every single piece on the block.
I just want to wrap up, touch on the Masters stuff real quick. So what we did, and by we, I mean Gabe for the most part, Masters are going to follow kind of a similar trajectory as far as going into that mock games week. Instead of kind of just, hey, games athletes do everything, it's going to be, hey, everybody has a couple mandatory pieces. And then depending on what level you're at, if you're a games athlete, we're going to tell you, hey, pick an additional X number of training pieces to do. If you are a, masters in that 35 to 54 range, then you get to pick 1 or 2, so it's a little bit less volume than your games counterparts. And then if you are an age division athlete kind of in that 55 plus range, we'll also give you kind of either choose, again, a smaller reduced volume. The other kind of neat thing that we did for the skill component is there's kind of a skill for the masses, and then there's also some game skill. So similar to what we were talking about, the handstand, walk, ramp, vested chest to bar pull-ups. When it comes to the masters community, there is kind of that maybe a bigger spread as to what's expected from the in the 35 to 39 age group, all the to the 60 plus. Those two categories are very different.
Right. Yeah.
So what we did is provide, hey, here's a skill piece for the non-CrossFit Games qualifiers, and then here is a games skill piece so that you games athletes out there have something to prepare you for the games in the skill section. So otherwise you'll still experience that same mock games week at the same time, but just a couple small nuances to the master's program.
Yeah, it's again so important to understand that we have been talking about teens and masters this entire podcast. Yep. And what you two are bringing to the table is like Misfit Athletics when it comes to MFT specifically, and then again that trickles down. I don't know if people out there had to do their like thesis in college or their capstone or whatever, but you have to defend your thesis every single piece at Misfit Athletics. So the three-headed monster here that starts with the MFT, we have to defend the idea behind every single thing that we do. And if you take time and you're thoughtful and you explain what you got, you'll be good to go. And if you get busy and write a shitty piece, guess what?
You're roasted.
Yeah, you get roasted. So that to me is always so important. I feel like sometimes these podcasts for the newcomers, it's almost like a job interview, and we don't shy away from that. We think that that's super fun. We've joked about how our favorite people at training camps are the ones who don't believe in what we're talking about on day one, because we know that we can get there. I got to end the podcast with a shout out to Sherb. This is year one of the teens programming. 15% of the women that are pre-qualified essentially for the CrossFit Games are Misfit athletes. Following the program, and the highest finishers out of all of those are Sherb's remote athletes. So if you are wondering what teens program you should be following to go to the CrossFit Games, guess what? I have a pretty good fucking idea which one. Maybe I shouldn't be swearing when we're talking about teens. My bad. Pretty good freaking idea.
Pretty neat idea.
Pretty neat idea. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in.
Freaking tuning in.
Who?
Coming on.
Stop swearing. Thank you for tuning in to the Competition Block 3 podcast. And thank you again to our show sponsors, properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on your very first jug of proper recovery. PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit to save on absolutely everything. SharpenTheAxeCo.com. Use the code word Keala, Keala, to save 10% and donate 10% to the Keala Foundation. And last but not least, MisfitAthletics.com. TeamMisfit.com for your affiliate programming needs in the SugarWOD marketplace. You can try what we do for free for 2 weeks, even at the beginning of Competition Block 3, so you can get that sort of intro period. As always, I'm at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let us know what you'd like to hear next on the podcast, and we will see you next week.